Good afternoon and welcome to the Hawks Nest. This week we're going to be talking about soccer and how they did in the OVC tournament. Then we're going to move on to football and how well they did over last weekend, big football weekend. Then we're finally going to finish off with cross country and the Ohio Valley Conference Championships here in Cape Girardeau. Welcome back. I'm Zach Tate, and alongside me is Kennedy Meyer. And Kennedy, you kind of want to just lead us into soccer to start off?
Sure. So Southeast snuck into the OVC tournament last week as the 7th seed. They beat Belmont on penalty kicks. The match was scoreless through 2 overtime periods, but there was plenty of shots. Belmont did end up out-shooting SEMO 19-17. But Maddie Karstens made the final penalty kick to advance SEMO to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, Maddie Carson's able to come up clutch in that match. You never like it when it goes to penalty kicks, but, there's usually ties in soccer, but once it gets to playoff time, you gotta get a winner, so they gotta figure out how to do it somehow. So thankfully, Maddie was able to come out and get that win for Southeast, and then they moved on to face host Eastern Illinois, and that one went to penalty kicks too. They ended up losing out on that one, but Esme Gonzalez tied it up in the second half. That was her 10th goal of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's ranked top 3 for SEMO, all-time in goals. She's doing great. So
yeah, Esme's, dynamic player for Southeast. Lucky to have her here. Not only did she lead the team in goals, but Emily Holton, she actually led the team in assists. So, those two together have been pretty dynamic,
Absolutely,
really
yeah.
helping the offense get rolling for soccer. Kind of moving on to football, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So it was a big week last week for football. The Redhawks are now ranked within the top 25 in the FCS coaches poll. We beat UT Martin 56-33 on the road. So we're 4-1 for OVC.
Yeah, football's doing phenomenal right now. Coming out of Jacksonville State a few weeks ago, being able to beat them and then moving on with that big road win. The first 2 minutes of the game, SEMO scored 13 points. Like, this offense seems unstoppable. And, just look at the night that Christian Wilkerson had for Southeast.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. He caught 8 passes for 263 yards, so that is incredible. It's a new SEMO record and the most in OVC this year.
Yeah, that was just like an insane game for Christian. And not only did he have over 250 yards, which is outrageous first off, but he also had 3 touchdown catches. So, this guy can do it all for Southeast. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. He was named OVC Player of the Week, too, so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely lucky to have him. He's been doing a great job, catching passes downfield for Southeast this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marquez Terry, who he's had a couple big games this year as well.
Yep.
He had his fourth 100-yard game this season so far, which is the most in the OVC. So, he had 123 yards this week and 2 touchdowns. When you got the run game and the pass game, you can almost do anything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. If you want to go ahead and talk about defense?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Defense had a huge week, too. Zach Hall, he ended up getting Defensive Player of the Week for, the OVC. He had a big game with 15 tackles, picked up an interception, and a forced fumble, which, he's had a couple of those this season so far.
Right.
So, with his 107 tackles this season alone, he's doing great things for Southeast football on the defensive end there.
Right, and was named OVC Defensive Player of the Week, so.
Yeah, definitely big game from Zach Hall and, the defense as a whole unit,
Mm-hmm.
Let's kind of move on from football last week and talk about it, this coming week. Big game against Tennessee State here at home.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So Tennessee State is 3-3 overall and 2-2 in the OVC. So they were successful 2 weeks ago against Tennessee Tech. This should be a good game coming up. So
yeah, hopefully Southeast able to kind of make something happen. I know, in that last match that they had before their bye week, they limited Tennessee Tech to only 79 rushing yards. So when them coming here, we got a player like Marquez, you know, hold him to less than 80 yards. That's might make things difficult for Southeast, but
Right.
you know, that's just one of those storylines we're gonna have to follow going into that. You want to move into cross country real quick?
Sure, yeah. So the Redhawks hosted the OVC Cross Country Championship for the first time since 2008. The women's team finished second in their 5K with 80 points at the Osage Center, and the men finished eighth in their 8K with 217 points. So we're doing pretty well.
Excuse me. Yeah, and Dan Plunkett for the men, he's been one of the leaders for the men so far, and he was the top finisher there. And on the women's side, Caitlin Shea and Sydney O'Brien were the top two finishers for the women. You know, for both programs, it's just kind of hard whenever you go up against schools like, you know, Eastern Kentucky, who's been dominant on that end for, you know, the last, you know, 5, 10, 13 years. It's just good program over there in Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we got this week. Thanks for joining, guys, and check back in next week.